my fantasy football friends. Welcome to the Multiple First Dynasty Football channel here on YouTube. The draft is approaching. It's 1 or 2 days away. If you're watching this, it's probably only 1 day away for you. Let's freaking go, baby. We're bringing our rookie tiers to you. We're going to be talking about the top 50 or so guys here today. We're going to be breaking them down into Greg and I's tiers, the official tiers for the channel. We're going to be letting you know where we stand with these players, final consensus before the draft breaks down and changes the whole list entirely. So I'm excited for that. Thank you for joining us today. Of course, we're joined by our film guru, Mr. Greg the Velociraptor. What's going on, brother?
Hey there, Tony. This is what it all leads up to. I guess really more than anything, it leads up to our final tiers after the draft. But like this is all our prep, and then we just mix draft capital and landing spot in, and then shake it up, and then that's the end. So, without further ado, let's get right to. Oh, actually, let me back up half a second. I'm gonna if you guys want this in written form, I will tweet this out and drop a link in the comments below this video so that you guys can sit with it and see it and look it over in written form. But without further ado, let's get going.
Yeah, man, and it's an important exercise. I was just joking around there a little bit, but it's you need to have this framework in place so that you can, take the new information from the draft and then mix it into this and come up with, your final rankings. If you just go strictly off of draft capital, you're gonna have problems. You got to have some flavor to it. That's how you hit home runs. Yeah, man, we got it right here for you. So. Consensus, Greg's ranking, and my ranking at the top of the ladder is just like every other analyst and YouTuber and podcaster that you see everywhere else. We got Bijan Robinson, Texas running back, future Hall of Famer, Super Bowl MVP, everything. Mr. Football, Bijan Robinson, in a tier by himself, tier 1. Why is Bijan ahead of all these quarterbacks in Superflex, Greg? Why do people do that? He's a running back. Why is that?
Yeah, these elite workhorse running back 1 players have such a low bust rate that you can't get away from them.
Yep.
There's no question that if any of these quarterbacks get to be a top 3 dynasty quarterback asset, they're going to have more dynasty trade value than Bijan at that point, for sure. And in fact, if they ever become a top 3 dynasty quarterback asset, they will have more trade value than Bijan will have at any point in his career.
They will leapfrog Bijan.
But absolutely. But quarterbacks miss, right? Like no matter how, and none of these quarterbacks are Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams, Peyton Manning, these guys who have
Jamarcus Russell,
Arch Manning. But Jamarcus Russell was a late jump up.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, he was.
These guys who have been the quarterback 1 since they were high school juniors.
Yes.
And they were the number 1 recruited prospect in next year's high school recruiting class, right? Like these guys hit at a very safe rate. That's just about the only thing safer than a Bijan tier running back. And so that's why your expected value here, you've got the ceiling, but you've also got the best floor in the class. So it's really not that complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Short and sweet, as none of these quarterbacks are so safe that we have them above Bijan, and that's pretty much the best way to look at it. But that's why he stands alone in a tier. I was reading a debate about this. What kind of career arc does he have to have in order to justify this position? If you had to comp him, like if Bijan had the same career as Zeke, was it worthwhile?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, if he had the same career as Josh Jacobs, is he worth a 101?
So here's the thing. Yeah, so the answer is yes. Like Josh Jacobs just gave you, what was he, the running back?
He's the running back 1, I think,
one
this year. Yeah.
Right? Like, so he gave you a running back 1 season on his rookie deal. That justifies all of this, right? Like, I think.
Yeah, number 3 PPR, Jacobs.
Yeah, I think Saquon.
Yep.
All of these all of these guys have mostly who get this very high draft capital have mostly justified. Like Leonard Fournette, I think disappointed us a little bit for that elite draft capital,
Yeah, a
and
little bit.
but like,
But he still had multiple RB1 seasons.
right, look at that floor. Look at where that floor is for Leonard Fournette, right? Like, for how many years was he worth multiple first round picks? And like, he was a little bit disappointing, right? So that's the safe floor. The safe floor is he's still going to be great.
Yep.
He's just not the Hall of Fame Super Bowl MVP that Tony was shouting at the beginning. Like, that's the floor, is he's not that.
Yeah, and even if he has a McCaffrey type career with the injuries, everything, where he misses multiple chunks and hurts you for a while, the upside he gave you when he's there, with regards to CMC is still makes 101 rookie pick. That's what that's worth. That caliber of 20 plus PPR points per game in a season. That's the kind of stuff that wins you a league. So.
Can I say something like philosophically about investing in running backs too?
Yeah.
Is like we like to think of these players as like stocks a little bit, like where they have value up and down, right? And so you're wanting to invest in appreciating assets, right? But I kind of think sometimes it's a good idea to look at a young running back and invest like it's an annuity or something. And it's like, I'm gonna
stay stable. Yeah.
I'm gonna pay a chunk up front, and I'm gonna get the payments back, and then that's it. I'm not worried about resale value. I'm not worried about, it's like this investment will pay out in points more than it's right, like more than what I put in.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to worry about how the value fluctuates up and down with running backs and age and all that other stuff. It's like, I'm going to invest the 101 in all the points Bijan will ever score, and and the wins that gets me.
Yep. And you always have the opportunity to exit. I mean, if you can exit in 4 years, 5 years, and probably still get a massive return, and just have eaten this whole time off the back of him, and didn't, and still be able to exit for a similar price probably. So it's interesting. Yeah, tier 2 is quarterback tier. Greg and I have Anthony Richardson leading the tier, then consensus 101 upcoming, and then Bryce Young, and then CJ Stroud in a row there. Is this how you plan on drafting them, Richardson, Young, Stroud?
Barring a real draft capital failure by one of them. If somebody falls to like 11 with the Titans, that if Richardson falls, that might move him down behind Young, certainly. I believe in 101 quarterbacks. I think that's a good investment. There's a lot of history of them hitting at a higher rate than even 102 and 103 quarterbacks. So I'm very in on Bryce Young. You could talk me into him over Anthony Richardson, but I really want to swing for the ceiling if Richardson gets any kind of draft capital to justify it.
If Richardson goes top 10, is that kind of the line? You think it's just top 10 at all? He's first?
For him to stay 2.
Yeah. I
think he probably has to stay top 8 for him to be number 2.
Sure.
Like he might drop behind Young if he drops to 9-10. CJ Stroud, if he got to 11, I don't think he will, but if some of these dropping rumors are true, he could drop behind your JSN tier guys. Like the next, he could drop out of this second tier. But for me, I think these quarterbacks are a very solid tier, and you're going to feel very good about any of them a year from now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I think that's pretty common, pretty chalk. Top 4 right there. Moving into the third tier, we see a little bit of discrepancy. So Greg's got Jackson Smith-Njigba, Ohio State receiver, in a solo tier there, and then I have Will Levis, a quarterback from Kentucky, JSN, and Jahmyr Gibbs, all together in my tier 3. That's how I see him, is a little flatter. You see a little more discrepancy from Levis.
I sure do. You notice we both have the same top 11, but
just ordered a little different.
But right here, yeah. So I like Will Levis. I just feel so safe about Jackson Smith-Njigba, and I don't like to waste these picks. And so I just think the combination of ceiling and floor for JSN, the ceiling is not as high as the top 4 guys. That's why he's here.
Yeah, he's
The
not Jefferson or
floors.
Chase, or he's
I
not that. I don't think so.
I don't know, man. The ceiling for those guys is, yeah. I don't think he's quite that, but I mean, he could be Garrett Wilson. He could be. I just
Okay.
for me, the safety though, that to me is what's nice about him is like there's not a lot of super safe prospects. Bijan's one. This is another one. And I have elevated some safe prospects, maybe above their ceiling. I think JSN has a very high ceiling. That's why I have him a tier ahead of my player 6, Jahmyr Gibbs. That's your player 7, and I have Gibbs in a tier of his own. You'll see here. I have Gibbs tier 4 by himself. I really like Jahmyr Gibbs. But I do think there is risk to his floor that you don't see with some of these other players. Like you've got Levis and JSN and Gibbs all together. I just think the chance that Levis or Gibbs busts is so much higher than JSN. That to me is what separates them. But
a big fall from Levis would knock him out of that for me. The safety you say with JSN is, I guess I do kind of attribute a lot of that to Gibbs, and you don't see it, and that's fine. Or you don't, we're not of the same mind on that. You still have Gibbs really high too, but I think I'd basically be willing to draft either of them interchangeably between the two based on what that team needs. I would take Gibbs ahead of Njigba if I had to. So, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's just that 199-pound thing where I just I can imagine a world where his bad games are too low to be an elite fantasy asset.
Okay.
That's a little easy for me to imagine, even if he has a good total points structure. But and then so you've got Zach Charbonnet having separated into tier 4 by himself. And we as a podcast, our consensus ranking says Will Levis, Zach Charbonnet have separated a little bit from the next tier of guys who are the receivers. What do you like about Will Levis? You have him as your player 5.
Yeah, I mean the 5, 6, 7 is pretty interchangeable there. But I'm assuming he's going to get top 10 capital with that. There's all this buzz that he's going to go 2. I guess that's all baked into it. If he, like you said with Richardson, if he drops out of 10, 12, then he's going to come down this list. I could definitely see him down as low as 10, 11, among this tier. So,
did you see his
big time
odds
fantasy
go
upside? What's it? Yeah, I know he's been talking about it a lot.
The odds on Levis going 1-on-1 went from 50 to 1 yesterday to 20 to 1 today. Now, I mean, 21 is still a long shot.
Yeah, I'm not betting my car payment on that. Yeah,
right. But yeah. But just that's out there. That's out there. I do think there are some, from a film perspective, there's like a lot to clean up considering how old he is, and even though there's a lot of talent. And from an analytics perspective, you kind of don't love the step backwards as a senior. And the seal, there's nothing is as clean analytically for Levis as it is for Young and Stroud. So I think there's just more bust chance, but I see the ceiling just as good as you do. Zach Charbonnet, what has he done to separate himself from the wide receivers that are below him in your estimation?
He's getting mocked heavily into the that late second round area. He seems to have separated from all the lesser running backs. These receivers are so close. RB being the position of need, and then Sharp with his size profile and his pass catching profile, makes him, a very attractive fantasy asset for a running back. I'm excited. He's got touchdown upside, pass catching upside. It's interesting. Charbonnet with round 2 capital is, I'd love that, and I would take him over these receivers.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think he's the third really safe asset after Bijan and JSN that we're looking at here. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to imagine Charbonnet not being somebody's heavily used running back at some point.
Yeah.
And then here we have tier 5, Johnston, Addison, Flowers. I have those guys in a tier with Charbonnet and Levis. You have them in their own tier behind. But our consensus rankings ended up looking more like yours, but you can see we both have the same top 11, and I think we both feel pretty good about where all three of these receivers are going to go. And we both agree on the order: Johnston, Addison, Flowers. And so I think that speaks for itself. What do you have to say to the viewers about these three receivers, Tony?
Landing spot's going to dictate so much between these guys. I mean, the Chargers are going to be in the market for a receiver. The Ravens are going to be in the market for a receiver. The Bengals will be looking for a pass catcher, probably a tight end. The Chiefs will probably be looking for a receiver in this draft. So any a Johnston that goes to Kansas City could jump. Any one of these guys could jump as high as like 7, I think, on most boards. So that it's interesting in that regard. You're going to see him skyrocket up for landing spot. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's right. One thing I do want to say though, if somebody gets the big draft capital and we think, oh, that's a garbage landing spot, like they get the really strong top 20 first round draft cap, top 25 capital,
to
whatever.
Philly. Yeah,
and then they get we don't like the landing spot.
Yeah.
People fade that too much, and then all of a sudden somebody goes in the 3rd round to Kansas City, and like people are like, oh, I love the Kansas City landing spot. And it's like, no, guys, these first round pedigree receivers do really well, and so and the top 5-ish slots in the 2nd round have a very high pedigree too, with a bunch of hits. So this group of receivers, I think, should be pretty chalky. And don't get cute. Be chalky here.
Yeah, I think so. When you talk about the first 11, 12 players, yeah, it's going to be pretty consensus across all of your drafts. And you want these receivers if you're picking outside in the top 10, 11, and they're still there. I think that top 11 is really like, kind of the A group. The main group right there, round 1, if you will, with an extra slot, and that kind of takes us into tier 6 here. This is where things become much flatter. There's a lot less discrepancy here. Probably you can call this almost the day 2 tier here, if you will, because pretty much all these guys are going to day 2 picks. Some of the running backs may slip further, but we both really like Hendon Hooker.
Tight ends might be day 1 picks.
Yeah, they might be. Yeah, tight ends might be. Yeah. We both really like Hendon Hooker. I like him a lot more than you. You had down here 21. We both like Kincaid a lot. Mayer's up there. What's Hendon Hooker? What's his upside here? I mean, what would it take for Hendon Hooker to jump over these receivers for you? How high does he have to get drafted?
He needs top. We'll call it like top 25 draft capital.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
But also I need like a plan. I need you know what I mean?
A business model here. Yeah.
This is a guy. Yeah, this is a guy who's coming off an ACL from an offense that doesn't profile as an easy transition, and he's a very old prospect, right? Yeah. So there's like, he's a situation dependent guy. I just think there's a lot of chance that he ends up in the Malik Willis bucket of high round 3 capital. So I'm a little sketchy right now. So he's a draft capital guy.
Yeah.
But the other thing for me, we talked about the top 11 just a minute ago, but some of these running backs who populate this tier 6, you might want to even zoom in so the viewers can see it a little better. But this big group of running backs, some of them are going to get capital probably. Remember, we did a mock draft just a couple days ago, and in that mock draft it was Roschon. But like some of these guys are going to get some draft capital and jump ahead of these tight end of Kincaid and Hooker and so forth.
Yeah.
Like I think that's really the thing is we've got Kincaid, Hooker, Michael Mayer as our consensus top 3. That's because we don't know which running backs are going to be any good, are going to get the cap, right? But once the running backs get the cap, they're going to vault over all these guys. I think that's the deal with Hooker is I kind of expect I'm kind of having him behind all of those running backs who I want to get capital until I see the capital.
Sure. I'm just excited for the player. I think he's a quarterback we could be a steal in that turn area. I'm going to be willing to take him there, assuming he gets like anywhere in the top 50, just because there was that big kind of drop off after 11. Yeah, anyone in tier 6 that stands out to you that you want to talk about here?
Well, Marvin Mims really popped. I think you notice. I mean, you had him right behind Hyatt and Downs. I have him way ahead of Hyatt and Downs. He came out in our aggregate rankings considerably higher than Hyatt and Downs, and I think that's real appropriate. I think he, it's a flat tier, but he just feels so much safer to me out of that group. But both safer and with a better ceiling, and then. Abanikanda, Roschon, Evans, Spears, Bigsby is how our group of these running backs came together. With a little bit of, there's some play in there on your list and mine, but I do think one of the themes there is that the Abanikanda, Roschon, especially Evans and also Evans and Bigsby are guys who have an opportunity to get a lot of volume, which is something I think both of us were looking for in a running back.
Any sneaky landing spots for any of these guys that you're looking forward to?
Well, yeah, I think the two that are just screaming out there for us are maybe three are Cincinnati, Miami, and Minnesota.
Yeah.
I really want guys in those landing spots. And then anybody if a receiver goes to Houston, I think there's a huge opportunity there.
Kansas City's got an opening at running back too. I don't believe in Pacheco long term, so something's going to get shook up there a little bit.
Yeah, but I also think I don't super believe in Pacheco long term, but I also look at the 4 to 5 year history of Damian Williams and then Darrell Williams and then Jerick McKinnon, and I don't feel super safe unless they spend up. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm looking at here. Hyatt and Downs were a real debate. Talk to me about your feelings on those two guys. I'm a lot higher on Tillman than those guys, and I think that's why he ended up higher, like a tier higher. We both had him in tier 6, whereas Hyatt and Downs for me and Rice for you were a tier lower.
Yeah, I could see myself having Mims ahead of these guys, come draft time. I haven't really drafted rookies yet, but it's just kind of an aggregate of all of these receivers are all flat here for me. I'm not going to sit here and try and say I like Jalen Hyatt more than Marvin Mims. I can't say that I do. It's kind of a crapshoot between these guys, and the draft capital is going to sort it out for me. It's the best way to put it. I wish I had a better answer, but
yeah. No, I get it.
The same is true for these RBs. They're just bunched together. I like Zach Evans. I like Abanikanda, Roschon. If I really had to separate them, probably something like that.
Yeah, and then looking down at the next tier, Hyatt and Downs are both going to go higher than this, I think.
Yeah.
But for me, guys who are under 180 are really sketchy. Miller, Tucker. So Tucker is a hard evaluation because of the injury. There's a late injury news on him, so follow your draft capital. If he ends up getting 6th round draft capital or 7th round draft capital, believe that. Right?
Because he's super hurt. Yeah.
But yes, believe there's something up. A-Chain is a guy who I think our consensus ended up lower because I think his size is sketchy. And then the second tier, this is a group that is dominated by these second tier tight ends who I want. This is a tier where I want to be adding my tight ends. I'm more into getting Musgrave and Laporta and Washington in the 27 to 30 range than getting Kincaid at the 1-2 turn.
It implies that you're willing to take these tight ends in like the first half of the 3rd round. Would you say you are in single tight end start TEP leagues?
Yes.
Okay.
I might even be happy to take them there in non-TEP leagues.
Mm-hmm.
start one tight end non-TEP leagues.
Yeah.
I think that's a good spot for them. Kendry Miller is a guy who could rise. He's a guy who also has some injury questions like Tucker. I think that Miller, Tucker, A-Chain are really like injury and size questions where draft capital will say a lot. And then this tier continues actually down a couple more spots. There's a page break there.
Yeah, there's a page there.
Evan Hull, Chase Brown. So there are a lot of running backs through those tiers 6 and 7. That's really the meaty part of the running backs for this class. What do you think about this whole tier, this tier 7?
This plays a tier I'm excited for, man, and it makes me really excited about my third round picks for the most part. Like Laporta is interesting for a third, Washington for sure. If I can get A-Chain in the third, I'd be really excited about that personally. Same for Boutte.
Yep.
That this is the top 11 has me thrilled for this class. And then this chunk has me thrilled for this class. This whole we'll just call this the second round basically has got me not stoked. Maybe some landing spots will change that, but it's very up and then down and then up for me across the class wide.
I really believe landing spots are going to make the second round better. Yeah. And so then moving down into tier 8, this is the next group of wide receivers. The wide receivers outside the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
The only running back in this group, I believe, is Deuce Vaughn, right? But we've got Mingo, Scott, Yoshivas, Ford Wheaton, Perry, and Hutchinson. It wouldn't shock me if that group of guys was better than running that wide receivers 4 through 10. You know what I mean? 5 years from now.
Is there players from this range of the draft at wide receiver specifically in years past who have really popped? We're not wasting our time with these receivers and knowing them, right? So when it comes to my mind, I'm thinking Romeo Doubs last year made some noise and he was kind of in this area. Deontay Johnson going years back. I feel like Terry McLaurin was kind of in this space a few years ago. Any other names that would have came out of this outside the top 10 receivers area?
D.D. West, Tyreek Hill is a big name
that
was late. Oh gosh.
Anyone else more modern? Alec Pierce, he probably would have been a little higher than this last year. He probably was right around here actually.
Maybe. He would have been in this general neighborhood. Oh gosh. You put me on the spot.
I did.
If I went back, if I went back and looked, the answer would definitely be Sterling Shepard.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. There have been many. Antonio Brown was a lower pick. And those are Tyreek Hill is not an ancient pick. That's like 6-7 years ago.
There's hits to be had out of here. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but this is a particularly, I think, rich class because of the way this is a class with a lot of really good athletic receivers who don't have great production profiles.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this is a particularly rich group for this tier of the draft. I think the end of the third, top of the fourth is a place where I see a lot of receivers, and also the tight end Kuntz here I think is a real value at this spot.
Looking forward to Kuntz. Looking forward to see what he does. Ford Wheaton's a really interesting prospect out of here. A.T. Perry, Yoshivas, Mingo. Tyler Scott. All these guys could pop for real, and I'm stoked about it.
Martavis Bryant is another name that came out of this area of a draft class.
Hunter Renfrow.
Hunter Renfrow.
Yep.
Hunter Renfrow was actually probably even a little lower than this, but but Hunter Renfrow is a guy who might compare decently to David Hutchinson. Yeah. And then down here in tier 9, we've got some guys. Trey Palmer, Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft, the tight end out of South Dakota State, Schoonmaker, the tight end out of Michigan, Michael Wilson, the wide receiver from Stanford, and Eric Gray. And that was the end of our consensus 4-round draft. I think it really does start to fade off in the back half of the 4th round. But I think those high fourths are actually worth, just like the 401 having a 4 next to it looks like nothing, but like I actually think if I was rebuilding, I would target 401, 402 as things that if I could get somebody to throw them in for free in a swap, I'd be real interested in those. I do think there's like a couple more than 36 prospects who are going to be interesting by the time draft capital comes around.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I just sent away the 403 in that trade we talked about on the previous episode.
But you know.
No, but there's value to be had there, especially when you talk about the people who don't know what they're doing in your league, taking guys out of completely nowhere in the 3rd round, forcing even more of these lower end but high upside guys down to you. So.
Yeah. Especially, I'm kind of really hoping that we see a bunch of blocking tight ends late in the 3rd, especially after the research I did. Check out our tight end episode.
Yeah.
Because I those can be traps, and like it would be great if we get a bunch of these trap guys who are like more blocking focused profiles.
Some going in out there for your league mates.
Going in day 2, yes, absolutely. So just watch out for that.
All right, man. Any names here from like tier 10, tier 11? Who do you like? Anything you want to talk to our viewers about here?
Yeah, I think a guy who could easily rise a bunch for me is Elijah Higgins, the tight end, the wide receiver tight end convert prospect out of Stanford. If I get like really confident conversion talk on, let's call it 5th round draft capital, I'm going to be real interested.
Yeah.
So I think that's a guy. Another one. I am pretty out on Kenny McIntosh. That's why he's down here in tier 10 for me. But some people are kind of in on him, and like so, I'm watching for draft capital there. That's one where I feel like I could be wrong. He didn't impress me, but he was like he did earn the starting job at Georgia and won a national title. So I feel like I might be being ungenerous a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. Tank Dell jumps out to me. I know he's got a lot of athletic, after the catch rack ability. So someone like that, you got to be interested in taking a shot, maybe a taxi squad shot, a post draft waiver claim on something like that. Someone I'll be tracking for sure.
Very good.
And then any of these quarterbacks down here you like? Hainer,
To me, Tanner McKee still stands out as the 6th best quarterback in this class.
Okay.
Tanner McKee from Stanford. It's all systems and stuff, right? But like, he has the ceiling isn't super high. I feel like the ceiling is like everything hits and he comes all the way home and you get Derek Carr. But like Derek Carr in the Superflex has been a fantastic asset for nearly a decade. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
Yeah, someone you could have sold for a lot. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So now obviously McKee is not going to get the draft capital. Carr was a high 2. If McKee is lucky, he'll be a 3rd round pick.
Yeah.
But I really do feel like that kind of statue in the pocket distributor classic pocket passing quarterback is a pretty good possibility for McKee. I just don't like 10 years ago he'd have been a higher draft pick because people would have been more into that profile. People may be a little less into that profile. Teams may be a little less into developing that profile today. But I really do see a lot in McKee's tape.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's so like, what kind of capital does someone like that need in order for him to be like, you want to give him a roster spot, you want to give him a taxi spot?
Like top 125,
okay.
Like middle of round 4. I
round
know
four,
there's
round
a
five.
big
Yeah.
well, there's a big tendency for people to put their cuts at the ends of rounds, but like I think there's like the top
A little more nuance than that.
125.
Yeah.
Top 125 is a spot where I think there it's in the middle of the fourth round, but the hit rates before that in the fourth round are a lot better than the
Yeah.
hit rates after that. It really starts to pivot downward after about top 125. Maybe and then top 150 is another kind of cutoff, and then everything after 150 is throwing darts to me. So that's like very high fifth is 150. Sam Howell snuck in under top 150 at the 501 last year.
Did he really? I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to throw a name at you, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's got a lot of athletic upside. When you talk about the profile that teams may be wanting to take a shot on, I think this guy kind of fits that mold a little bit more. And then he translates the fantasy with his play style pretty well with his high mobility. Again, if he gets in that top 125, top 150, I'm interested. That's someone I'll be given a taxi spot off a fifth round pick. If he's a sixth or seventh round NFL pick, then I'm probably not interested in Thompson Robinson so much.
There we go. Hey, let me ask you. Just looking at some of the guys who we have a pretty big discrepancy on. So you're a lot higher on Michael Mayer than me. What are your thoughts on Michael Mayer?
Mayer, I mean, he's probably going to get the first round capital right. The landing spots for tight ends are all pretty sweet for the most part. You're talking about, LA Chargers,
Okay.
Cincy, Green Bay. I mean, those are interesting places where the tight end could have a big role with established quarterbacks other than Love. But so I like that, and you have to imagine he's going to land in one of those spots. I don't know. I guess it's he's among this tier. He could these receivers could jump over him if they get go
Gotcha.
top 50 or so.
Okay. I'm just sort of looking around for places where we had a substantial difference. No, we don't. So Tyler Scott, you liked a lot better. And I know you've kind of liked him throughout this process decently. Is there anything about that profile?
It looks like he's going to lend himself to fantasy, right? He's like the slot guy, right?
Yep.
Yep. And so I'm interested in that. Just a lot of people that I respect in the community seem to be higher on him, so he's rising for me, and that's why I would put him right around this area.
Very good.
Talk about 36. If I could get, if you can get a fantasy relevant wide receiver in the late third, you're killing it. So you got to take shots on that.
All right. Excellent.
All right. Yeah. Appreciate it, man. Thank you for stopping by, guys. Leave us some comments, like, subscribe, everything. Let us know how you feel here. Where do you have Levis? Where do you have Sharp? What are you doing with Hendon Hooker in your drafts? What does Hooker have to get for capital in order to, be a top 12 pick, a first round rookie pick in your super flex drafts? Let me know. Hit me up. So stoked for the draft. We're gonna be breaking down post draft stuff, rookie drafts, trades, the whole nine. Stay plugged in, and good luck out there to everybody.